Grr, grr. Oh my god. Hello, huge movie fanatic Nate, stopping on by. This time I'm coming at you to review something that was very, maybe not very, but modestly, kind of, sort of. I was pretty interested in this when the news came around the pike about was it 2 years ago or something like that? The Grizzly sequel. As you guys may or may not know, I'm a pretty big fan of the film from 1970, is it 6 or 7? I'm such a big fan of it, I don't know when the hell it came out, but the 70s film, mid to late 70s film by the name of Grizzly. I've got one of the more recent Blu-rays of it. I got original VHS on media, I got a DVD. I got 3 whole Grizzly things, so I'm a really big fan of the original film Grizzly, and like 2 years ago when the news of this release coming out came down the pipeline, whatever the hell, I don't know what the hell I'm trying to say, but when news 2 years ago of Grizzly 2, the unfinished film, finally being finished and being released, I was kind of excited. I didn't really want to necessarily pay any money to see it because I heard that from a little bit of research online that it was pretty much a disaster, but basically for those of you who don't know, apparently Grizzly was such a big success that in the early 80s, I guess 1983, they actually started, and filmed the majority of an attempt at a Grizzly sequel by the name of Grizzly 2 Revenge. Well, I don't know. I think it was going to be called something. Shit, I can't remember right now. Oh, it was going to be called The Predator. Actually, I don't know if it was going to be like Grizzly 2 The Predator or simply The Predator, but what it ended up being called in 2020 when it was finished and finally released to the 10 people that wanted to see it was Grizzly 2 Revenge. And what I love about that title is it's not The Revenge, which kind of grammatically, I can't even say grammatically, would have made more sense. The Revenge. I just kind of like how it's a cheesy title for a cheesy movie. Grizzly 2 Revenge. We don't have enough ink to say the before revenge, so we're just going to say Revenge. Incidentally, if you guys don't know, this is a movie that actually stars, well, they're just in the opening scene, but the movie does feature Charlie Sheen from basically 1983, George Clooney, and Laura Dern, those 3 actors, which have obviously since gone on to be pretty big stars. Well, Charlie Sheen was in Apocalypse Now, probably other things before he did this. I can't even fathom that Charlie Sheen even would have done Grizzly 2 after, making a name for himself with Apocalypse Now, but I don't know. It says that the footage for this movie was filmed like in 83 or finished in 83. It just seems hard for me to believe that Charlie Sheen, after doing that movie Apocalypse Now, would be involved in Grizzly 2, but I guess maybe at some point he was, whether it was before or after Apocalypse Now, I really don't know, but those are like on the poster or the cover art for this film, the release of this film from 2 years ago in 2020. Those are the main billing stars, and indeed they are in the film, but they're only in the film for maybe 4 or 5 minutes at the very beginning before they get dispatched by Grizzly 2 Revenge. I gotta tell you, I was interested in this for the past 2 years, but as I said, I didn't want to pay to see it. Luckily, it ended up popping up. I don't know how long it's been there, but at any rate, I was able to see it for free on Prime. My mom's got a Prime membership, so if you've got a Prime membership at the time I saw it, you were also able to see it for free. I don't know how long that's going to last, one of the downsides of the streaming service bullshit. But I was very grateful to be able to see it for free because the Blu-ray's like 15 bucks. I'm sure as shit glad I didn't blind buy this. Don't really feel the need to own it. It's kind of a disaster. And what's interesting about this movie is it not only stars Charlie Sheen, George Clooney, not stars, but features Charlie Sheen, George Clooney, and Laura Dern, but it also features Louise Fletcher, of course. I think she's most well known for her role in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, among other films. It's really weird that, this movie got some pretty decent stars even at the time, in relation to what they've already been in. Louise Fletcher, you've got a very young Deborah Foreman before obviously April Fool's Day. You've also got Charles Cyphers, the guy who's the sheriff or whatever, the father of Annie in Halloween 1 and 2, and he also makes an appearance obviously in Halloween Kills as well. Did he die in Halloween Kills? I can't remember if he died. I think he may have died, I don't know. Will he be back for Ends or not? I can't remember if he died in Kills or not, but you've got those individuals. You've also got the guy who was shooting at Rambo out of the helicopter from First Blood. That guy's also in it. There's also a familiar face. There's some other familiar faces that I've seen in other movies and stuff, TV shows from the time. So there's quite a bit. If you're a movie slash TV aficionado, there's quite a few faces you're probably going to recognize in this movie, which is really fun. So basically, when they released this movie 2 years ago in 2020, basically whatever they did, I guess they ran it in some film festivals, and then they did, I don't know, it was available for streaming before it came out on Blu-ray, whatever. It's still available, obviously, for streaming and Blu-ray and stuff, but they build it as, like it's on the poster, 37 years in the making. It's not 37 years in the making, it just took 37 years for someone to acquire the disaster footage and shoot some new, I guess, nature establishing shots here and there, and do some hokey ass computer graphic CG bear stuff and this and that, and it took 37 years for someone to basically find time, or someone to find motivation, for someone to come along in the world to actually want to try to polish this, TURD, if you will, and so it's not like they were trying to make it for 37 years. I love that tagline, such a load of BS. I love it. 37 years in the making. No, it was, and it was so crappy and everyone knew it. That's why it didn't come out for 37 years. But I'm not going to do a beat by beat, but I do have to comment on the very beginning of the movie, which is obviously new, digitally shot, probably drone footage, this and that, establishing of the forest or the woods or whatever. And there's just some footage of some baby, adolescent baby bears frolicking, wrestling each other, and then they show some bigger bear or something like that, and some just nondescript hunter guy shooting a bullet, and it's like you see the bullet going through the air, and you see this shot of this bear roaring, and this fake ass, hokey ass CG bullet impact. It seems like there's at least 2 bullet impacts on this bear, which I think is just any old bear, and I don't know if this is the bear that's supposed to be wounded at the beginning of the movie. The premise of this is kind of like Claws, if you've seen the movie from the 70s, Claws, the ripoff of Jaws. It's also a Grizzly film. I've reviewed it on this channel. That premise is the same thing, like the beginning of the movie, some big huge bear is injured or something and goes on a rampage. So interestingly, this kind of Grizzly sequel is in a lot of ways the same premise of Claws. Also that guy who plays that one guy in the first and third Indiana Jones movies, I can't remember his name, but it's the guy Indy and Marion hook up with in wherever they are, Solak or something. I think his name is John Rhys Davies or something like that, but that's another face that you'll recognize in this movie. And if they really did this in '83, that means they did this after the first Indiana Jones film. It's so funny seeing all these actors that were in actual movies doing this movie. I mean, I guess you don't really know when you're getting into it how competent the movies are going to be or whatever. It'd be interesting. There's probably a lot of movies like this that filmed, either started filming or filmed the majority of, that just got shelved like this, that were just crap. It's amazing to see. It's amazing that so many, that so much of this movie, basically more or less all of it, was filmed and was crap and shelved. It's just crazy when stuff like this happens. It's not a waste of time if you're a movie enthusiast and are interested in seeing a movie that was shelved, basically shot and more or less all shot, and except for maybe the movie's missing a lot of the bear footage and stuff. I mean, all the kills that happen more or less happen with no bear footage, more or less. And so I mean, it's like it wasn't completely film finished. But I mean, I think all of like the actor stuff and the principal actor stuff and all that kind of stuff was finished. But it's not a complete waste of time, because as I was trying to say, it's a really interesting to be able to actually see one of these, so bad we shelved it for 37 years kind of movies, and then finally it coming out 37 years later and going, I see why it almost never came out, because it really didn't really, I don't know, it's really so crappy that it really shouldn't have come out. The premise of this movie, very briefly, is kind of interesting, and honestly it's really impressive because, well, before I even talk about that, I'll just say the premise. This guy shoots this bear at the beginning. I don't know if this grizzly is supposedly grizzly at the beginning. I don't know if this is the grizzly that goes on, I would imagine, to terrorize everyone for the rest of the movie or not. But what ends up happening is, the premise of this movie is this: it takes place in this, national park area or whatever. I can't remember if they name the park or whatever, but basically there's this Louise Fletcher is like this politician, and for some reason she wants this big concert thing to happen in the state or national park, wherever the hell this takes place. And so a big concert's coming, we're going to have it in this big national park. I can't remember. I mean, this movie doesn't really worry about plot points or details, or it's not really about that. It's about just Grizzly Mayhem or whatever. And the irony is they never really filmed the Grizzly Mayhem, so the finished movie, even in 2020, is still kind of unfinished, where it's like you just see people screaming faces and do some flash editing effects and cut to the next scene. That means they're dead. You don't really get to see too much of like actual Grizzly or even fake Grizzly action. There's a little bit of that. There's kind of a puppeted freaking animatronic bear towards the end of the movie when it's wreaking havoc on the concert goers. But one thing I did want to say that I was actually watching this perplexed at is they obviously when they filmed this movie, they had permission to obviously film around this actual concert setup and venue, because I was watching this movie and going, well, how did they get all these extras? And then as it went on and on, I'm like, well, they must have just filmed this before and or after a real concert. And I mean, that's the one thing I'll give to this movie is, the whole concert aspect of it is really well done, because it's like a real concert that they filmed. So it's like this huge stage, all these lights, fireworks, and just droves and droves and droves of concert goers, like huge, like Woodstock looking and this and that. And that's the best thing about this movie, is probably just the enormity of like the concert aspect, and the just seeing all the fans and stuff. But it's really ironic, because you don't really see this in a movie. They actually have like a concert venue, so it's like you've got this amazing, rarely seen production value in a movie, but then it's cut with these half-ass shots of these performers doing this just hokey ass music shit that is so underwhelming. And it's just insane, because that's why I'd recommend this if you can see it for free, for just enthusiasts of what does a movie look like that it has got like awesome concert footage production value, but it's just horrible at the same time, that was almost never released. It took 37 years to be finished and released. What does that look like? And that's why it was just fun to actually see it. Probably only need to see it once, but it was cool to see it just for that aspect, because it's kind of like if any of you have seen like the footage for Sleepaway Camp 4, the Survivor that was put out way back 20 years ago now in that Anchor Bay, I think it was like a Best Buy exclusive in the Anchor Bay DVD trilogy set. It kind of reminds you of that. Like the movie is just so shitty. I'm not saying like the acting's really that bad, but I mean it's just like you can tell when a movie just, when it's filmed by someone who just doesn't really know what the hell to do or what's going on, and that's what this movie is. It's crazy to see, like, I think this is the youngest, as I said before, the Charlie Sheen, George Clooney, Laura Dern stuff is at the very beginning. It's like 3 kids going out to, a couple in the third wheel going out to camp or whatever and drink and doing this and that, and so it's a very brief scene, but it's really cool. It's definitely the youngest I've ever seen Laura Dern, and I gotta say, back then, man, in the early '80s, I mean, it's really great, because this is as close to probably, I mean, I don't know everything Laura Dern's done, but as close to you're gonna see her as being like some teenager / early 20-something in a Friday the 13th movie. She's all taken off her whatever top and bottom, so she's in bra and underwear and stuff, and quite the bod on her back then. So I will say that. So it is funny to see like a young Laura Dern as close as you'd probably ever get at that age to being in like a Friday the 13th or something like that. So I can't imagine, Laura, I mean, I guess they don't really care at this point if the movie comes out or whatever, but it would be interesting to be like, oh God, Of course, they probably figure no one's going to see it or whatever, but I don't know if I really have much more to say. All I know is it definitely has the appearance of just being, all the footage, even though there's like enough for a feature-length movie. The movie clocks in at about an hour and 15 minutes or whatever. I gotta tell you, it's kind of a more or less excruciating hour and it's 14 or 15 minutes. I mean, there's worse movies, I guess, but yeah, even though the foot, even though the movie's cut together and this and that, it just never has any kind of sense of direction or anything, and it's just really interesting. I keep coming back to this point of it's just a really interesting, if you're a film student or if you're a film enthusiast who, want to see what the hell an abandoned movie that almost never came out looks like. It's a really fun way to see that, and it's kind of like when you watch it, it's like, oh yeah, okay, now I know why it almost never came out. But I mean, one thing that I will say that it does have going for it is movies that like Grizzly and outdoor movies that I appreciate so much is it's got so much. I mean, basically the whole thing takes place outdoors. Huge thumbs up for that. I got you gotta love that aspect of it. So that it's got that going for it, outdoors. And before 2 years ago when this movie was announced that it was coming out and being 37 years in the making and this and that, and them having to shoot new stuff to finish it, I was like, oh shit, well how much new stuff are they filming? I thought maybe it would be just 15 or 20 minutes of the old footage and the rest of it would be hokey ass new footage. Well, fear not, the majority of the movie is the actual 1983 footage with just bits and pieces of here and there of like nature establishing shots and stuff and probably hokey CG bear stuff or whatever. But to fill in the gaps. But the majority of the movie I was happy and pleasantly surprised to see was the actual 83 footage. So if you're wondering about that, that's that. There were glimpses of shots, just standard definition, zoomed in, hokey ass shots of what I want to say is maybe when the Grizzly died at the end or was supposed to be electrocuted or something. You can't even tell what the hell really happens because you can't tell what's really happening in the movie. But there was, I want to say, just a couple frames, like maybe a 10th or 20th or 30th of a second of the shot, what I think is Jaws 2 close-up zoomed standard definition shot of the Jaws shark burning after he chomps on the electric wire. I want to say there's just a very small glimpse of that. They also show for about the same time, 30th, 40th, 50th of a second, like the Grizzly from the first film, like standard definition prancing and running and stuff when he's chasing the guy or whatever, chasing someone. Or there's shots of the bear running in the original Grizzly film. So there's a couple of shots and it's so funny. And there's even some concert footage that's like standard definition. It's just, oh my god, it is a fun exercise to see how they piece this piece of crap together. And the concert footage is so horribly horrible. It is just so laughable. And what's so funny about the concert footage, like I say, they must have filmed their movie scenes just before the concert started and also maybe intermissions or after the concert ended or intermissions. So what they'll do is they'll get their presumably just nobody actresses or people pretending to be they got these 5 girls or something that are supposed to be a musical act or whatever. So horrible, the song's so stupid, but it's just wild to see because they got shots from on the stage facing out towards the audience. So it's wild to see this hack 5 chicks doing this shit on stage with the background we're seeing all of the just droves and droves of actual real people out in the audience. So it's really, really, I've never seen anything like this before in a movie. To actually have like the production value of the huge stage, the huge audience, and have these 5 hokey ass chicks doing just the most laughable act you've ever seen. And like I say, there's like 2 or 3 also bits interspersed throughout of standard definition footage of some other guys doing some act or whatever. It's just, oh my god. So I guess that's my review of Grizzly 2 Revenge. It's hard for me to not say The Revenge just automatically to be grammatically, I'm so glad I can say that word, grammatically correct or whatever. But yeah, I'll give it as high as a star out of 4 stars just for its educational aspect of this is not how you want to do a movie kind of a thing, and just interesting to see how the people who finished this movie and put it out basically pieced it together. And obviously, I mean, someone could have done a much better job with budget, but I mean, honestly, the footage that they filmed in '83 really doesn't deserve, that's why it never happened for almost 40 years, it really doesn't deserve a better job. Anyways, so that's why it took 37 years. That's why it almost, for it to happen, that's why it almost never happened. But yeah, if you can see it for free, it's a it's a fun exercise in how not to make a movie or what a abandoned movie looks like, kind of a thing. And yeah, oh my God, this movie is out on Blu-ray. I think it's just some no-name label, $15, I want to say. Not something I need to own. If I came across this for $3, I'd probably buy it on disc or Blu-ray or DVD or whatever. But yeah, it's just so crazy seeing these people who would actually go on to be in real movies and stuff, and people who had already been in real movies when they filmed this. It's just, Deborah Foreman. There were a lot of faces that I didn't know were in it, because I mean, the cover is, Charlie Sheen, George Clooney, Laura Dern. We knew that, but when going into it, I didn't know that. I knew Louise Fletcher was in it, I think, but I didn't know that Deborah Foreman and Charles Cyphers and the guy from First Blood and other familiar faces were in it. So I guess that'll pretty much do it for my review of Grizzly 2. Revenge obviously doesn't hold a candle to the original Grizzly, but that's how sequels so often turn out. Usually sequels are not quite as good as the original, but still really good. I mean, this is an example of just going like completely polar opposite of the original. Not to say the original is a masterpiece, but it's a guilty pleasure of mine in a movie that I appreciate for the reasons that, well, go check out my review of Grizzly to see those reasons. I guess that pretty much does it for this review. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed, and as always, we'll catch you on the next video.
Grr. Grr.